Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. This one is team selection for Game Week 23. So we'll have a quick look at how I got on in Game Week 22. We'll have a look at how I'm set up for Game Week 23. And we'll look at my transfer plans because I've got 5 free transfers, so I have to do something this week. And we will also have a look at Liverpool players and the best third Liverpool option. But before we do that, let's get into how I got on in Game Week 22. It was a pretty boring one. I mean, I moved from 59k to 57k, so tiny green arrow, 51 points in total, a game week rank of 3.3 million. Defenders are all pretty good. I mean, Lewis Hall I was never benching and he got 4 points, so that's not bad. Castan and Munoz was a tough decision. They both got 6 points, so it didn't matter who I went with in the end. Trent got 11 points. Some people were telling me to bench Trent. That was never going to happen. I was never benching him, and this is the reason why. He can always come up with just a random haul out of nowhere. Goalkeeper wise, it was kind of a close decision on who I went with there as well, but it didn't matter. Neither of them got points, as is very often the case. Eze just keeps chipping in with points, and he's been brilliant since I got him in. I think since I got him in, he's actually returned every week, which is ideal. Bruno Fernandes with 8 points. This is the beauty of having penalty takers in your team. Even if they're not playing well, even if their team is not playing well, they can get a random penalty and they come out with 8 points out of nowhere. Now, a couple of weeks ago I did do Mbeumo to Bruno Fernandes as a transfer, and I wasn't sure on it at the time. It has actually worked out. I think Mbeumo's got two two-pointers in the last couple of weeks, so 4 points in total. Bruno's got a 4-pointer and an 8-pointer, so 12 points in total, so I am 8 points up on that move so far. There is a chance that I just have to reverse it in a week or two, but that's fine. I'll be up. I'll probably still be up unless Mbeumo goes kind of mad this week. So I went with Salah captain in the end. I just wasn't 100% sure that Palmer was going to play as many minutes as he did, but it turns out that neither of them got a return anyway, and Salah outscored Palmer by 1 point, so not much to write home about really. The forward line, Isak, Jackson and Pedro all scoring 2 points each. Again, another decision I did have was to start João Pedro or Semenyo. It turns out I got that one wrong. Bournemouth are just so good. I didn't realise quite how good. I mean, Newcastle have been one of the better defences over the last couple of months, really. But Bournemouth made it look so easy. Their attack is so good. So, turns out maybe I should have played Semenyo, but it was only 3 points anyway. He only got 3 points more than João Pedro, so really isn't the end of the world. I'm glad I've got Semenyo though, because their fixtures get really nice in a couple of weeks. So that's how I got on in Game Week 22. I'll have a look. I'll show on screen how I'm lined up for Game Week 23, and then we'll go through what moves I'm looking at, because like I mentioned, I've got 5 free transfers, and as you can see at the top there, I've got 0.5 million in the bank, so a couple of options. Right, so defenders and goalkeepers is a pretty easy one this week. I don't really have any benching headaches. I mean, Fabianski has got Aston Villa away, pretty bad fixture, but Bruggen's got Everton at home, a good fixture, so that one's easy. Then on the bench, I've got Castan with Man United at home and Lewis with Chelsea at home. Neither of those are great fixtures, to be honest. Meanwhile, Trent has Ipswich at home, really good. Munoz has Brentford at home, really good. And Hall has Southampton away, also very good. So, yeah, in terms of players that I'm looking to sell soon, defensive-wise, Rico Lewis will be going either this week or next week for sure. I could have sold him a couple of weeks ago. For about 4 or 5 weeks, I've not really wanted him in my team, or needed him really, so I could have sold him, but I've just been rolling instead. There's no point in getting someone in early when I didn't need to, so I've just had him on the bench and just been rolling instead, but he will be gone either this week or next week. Hall and Munoz are also interesting ones. They're both great. Munoz has got really good fixtures. Hall after this week, not so much. But one or both of them are going to have to go soon. Not because I don't like them, I think they're great, like I say, but Newcastle and Crystal Palace is a fixture in Game Week 29 that's probably not going to happen. Now, that's because Newcastle essentially game week 29, whoever gets to the Carabao Cup final, their fixture won't happen. It'll be a blank, which at the moment, the first leg has been played of the semi-final. Newcastle are 3-1 up against Brentford, I believe. So it's very, very likely that Newcastle are going to be in the Carabao Cup final, meaning that Newcastle versus Crystal Palace won't be on. Now, game week 29 is obviously, for that reason, a popular time to use the free hit chip. However, I don't think I want to use the free hit chip in that week. I think I would rather just deal with it and play through it. Essentially, maybe even dead end my team into game week 29 and then wildcard in game week 30. And for that reason, I will need to offload some Newcastle and Palace players at some point. Now, I'm in no rush to do it, don't get me wrong. I don't necessarily need to sell these guys now, but after this week, Lewis Hall's fixtures do get a bit rough, so it might be a good time to get out of him. Although, the only reason I'd be wary of doing that is that I've got quite a lot of value tied up in him. I bought him at 4.5 million, I think, and now he's like 5.1, I believe. So, and there's a chance I'll want him back from, I think it's game week 30. His fixtures are really nice, so there's a chance I want him back. So that's one to think about. But other than that, look good for this week. And there is a chance that I could be bringing in a defender and playing them instead of one of these guys, but we'll get onto that in a minute anyway. Midfielder-wise, again, it's looking kind of good this week. I mean, got Salah with Ipswich at home. He will, of course, be my captain. I still have my triple captainship, so he'll be my triple captain next week as well. Eze has Brentford at home, really good fixture. Brentford defence isn't good, especially away from home, as we've mentioned before. Semenyo is one that I just really hate benching every week, so I'm glad that I am in a situation where I'm just playing him this week and there isn't a benching headache, to be honest. So Semenyo has Nottingham Forest at home, which isn't the best fixture, but Bournemouth attack is so good. I think next week they've got Liverpool. After that, their fixtures are unbelievable, so I'm definitely carrying him into that. I will potentially get another Bournemouth attacker or Kirkes in as well. But for this week, Nottingham Forest at home. Palmer has Man City away, obviously a pretty bad fixture. The vice captaincy probably won't stay on him, actually. That graphic is just there from before. The vice captaincy will probably be on one of the forwards, actually. But Man City away, not the best fixture, but also not the worst time to play them. Yes, they looked a bit better against Ipswich, or they looked back to their normal self, to be honest. But it was against Ipswich, so I'm not holding out too much hope that that continues, really. The fixtures are bad for City, so I am envisaging they do struggle a little bit. I mean, when they came up against a good team like PSG, who aren't even that good a team, really, they really did struggle, and they conceded a lot of chances, so wouldn't surprise me if the same happened at Chelsea, because Chelsea attack is very good. So I'm fine with playing Palmer. Fernandes is also there with Fulham away. Now, Fulham are actually one of the better defences numbers-wise, but of late, they just kind of haven't been. They've got worse as a defence, it seems, over time. They started the season really strong. They're still like top 4 for XGC, but I mean, West Ham put 3 past them, so without a striker as well, pretty much. So how good can you be if you're conceding 3 to a strikerless West Ham? But yeah, that is kind of why I've got Castan on the bench and I'm playing Fernandes. I'm playing Fernandes because he's on penalties, and like we saw last week, he can just pop out with a random return and get you 8 points out of nowhere. So I'm happy with him. And then if we go on to the forwards here, so I've got João Pedro with Everton at home. That's a good fixture. There's a lot of people selling him, which I kind of get. I mean, I get it in the sense that Calvert-Lewin is a good option for next week because of the double, and Leicester at home is one of the fixtures. Outside of the double, Everton's fixtures aren't the best, but I don't think you need to do that move this week anyway. Just wait till next week to do it. Isak, Southampton away, he would probably be my vice captain, as I mentioned a minute ago. The fixture's really good. Again, he's another one that I need to think about because, as I mentioned, the Newcastle and Palace game is quite likely to be postponed in game week 29, so he is potentially one that I move on. And that brings me nicely to Jackson, who's on the bench. Now, I said last week that Jackson is probably a buy rather than a sell. Now, I'm thinking about selling him this week or next week just because I've got quite a nice way of getting him back. I think long term he's good still. Obviously this week he's playing City, which isn't the best. After that he's got West Ham, which is a really nice fixture, but I just don't mind from game week 27 onwards. I think it's game week 27 it's either Leicester at home, then Southampton at home, or Southampton at home, then Leicester at home. Either way, that's 27 and 28. They will probably or definitely be playing in game week 29, I think, so don't need to worry about that as much. So I just think that it's okay to sell him now. I don't mind selling Isak now, but it's Southampton away, so I wouldn't want to do it this week. I think Jackson is probably the one to go because I need some funds to get a third Liverpool player in anyway. I can't sell João Pedro to Gakpo, for example, and I can't sell João Pedro to Calvert-Lewin and then upgrade anyone else. So it has to be Jackson really that goes, I think. So that's kind of my reasoning for that. Albeit I do see myself getting him back in, potentially for Isak, in a few weeks' time when Chelsea have those good fixtures. But before we get into that, I've got to make a transfer. And the players that I'm looking at leaving my team are 1, Jackson, because he's quite a nice cash cow to use. 2, Rico Lewis is definitely going to go, as I mentioned earlier. It's just where I go with it. Now we'll talk about that in a second, but first, I just want to talk about the third Liverpool slot because everyone has Salah pretty much. A lot of people have Trent. If you don't, you should probably try and get Trent. It's that third slot that's difficult, so let's talk about that a little bit now. Okay, so on screen, I've got Liverpool's fixtures for the next however many games. So they played Lille in the Champions League on Tuesday, as you can see up top left. Then it's Ipswich in game week 23. Then they've got another Champions League game against PSV. Then it's Bournemouth in the league. Then it's the EFL Cup semi-final, Liverpool versus Tottenham. Then it's an FA Cup game against Plymouth. Then it is the rest of the second half of game week 24 against Everton. And then it's game week 25 against Wolves. So that's what their landscape looks like for the next few weeks. So when you're thinking about this third Liverpool player, obviously the good players that we'd want are likely to be rotated. The likes of Diaz, the likes of Gakpo, the likes of probably Robertson's in that category because Tsimikas is there, and even Konate maybe because we know he's not fully fit. Now for me, I think that Gakpo is first choice on the left. So I think he will play in the games that matter, and I also believe that Konate is first choice as centre-back next to Van Dijk. So for me, they're the two to be looking at. Alisson's okay, but I just don't like spending that much money on goalkeepers, so I personally won't be going there. And Diaz is, again, he's okay, but I just think he shares more minutes with Darwin and Jota than Gakpo shares minutes. I think Gakpo just starts the important games, whereas I'm not sure that can be said for Diaz. So the first thing to note is that Konate and Gakpo were both rested and didn't play 1 minute against Lille. So firstly, that means that they look good for game week 23 against Ipswich. Then it's quite plausible that they get another rest in the Champions League against PSV. If he's happy to rest them against Lille, then he's probably happy to rest them against PSV. That means that he's then fresh and fine for that Bournemouth game. Konate and Gakpo this is. So then comes a few days later, so you can see there, Saturday 1st of Feb, and then the EFL Cup final, the EFL Cup semi-final, is Thursday the 6th of Feb, so a few days later. I do think they'll probably play this. This is obviously an important game, and they are 1-0 down, I believe, as well. Yeah, aggregate 1-0 down. So they need to win that game. I do believe they'll put out the first 11 for that game. But what that does mean is that they can then be rested against Plymouth. So the rest periods are quite nice over this. The only ones that aren't are then, so they play Thursday the 6th of Feb. 6 days later, which is a pretty long time, they'd play against Everton and then they've only got 4 days to play against Wolves. So it's only these last 2 fixtures that I think are a problem, rest and rotation wise. I think outside of those, they play the Ipswich game, they play the Bournemouth game, they play the Everton game. It's probably the Wolves game that's the one that is up in the air, but that's a long time away. And the ones that we really want, I guess, are this Gameweek23 fixture and then the 2 in the double, which I think are safe for both Konate and Gakpo. So now let's have a look at the options that I've got for my team based upon these 2 players and what other players I'm looking at as well. So based on what we just went through with Liverpool, my next picks for Liverpool after Salah and Trent are Konate and Gakpo. So I'm going to base basically my transfers around getting one of them 2, which is why I've got option 1 and option 2 here for my team. So as I mentioned, I've got 5 free transfers. Now, these moves are actually, the Gameweek24 moves are exactly the same, so I don't know why I bothered putting them on there twice. But essentially what this looks like is Rico and Jackson both out this week. And then it's either Konate and Calvert-Lewin or Gakpo and Mykolenko. That's the kind of pair that I need to weigh up. After that in Gameweek24, so I'll be making, I don't actually know if it'll definitely be Verbruggen, it could be Fabianski, but it'll be one of the goalkeepers to Pickford. Then it will be either Eze or Bruno Fernandes to Mbeumo. They're moves that I will almost definitely do in Gameweek24, but I just don't need to do them this week. So with option 2 as well, one thing to note, if I do Gakpo and Mykolenko, I don't need to do the Rico Lewis to Mykolenko move this week. I can afford, Jackson is more expensive than Gakpo, so I can afford to just do Jackson to Gakpo and then move that Rico to Mykolenko move into Gameweek24. Whereas on option 1, I can't do that. I can't afford to just go Rico Lewis to Konate. I could earlier in the week, but I didn't realise that I could. I did something quite silly where I didn't look at potential price rises. So now I'm 0.1 million off of doing that move without the other move, which is slightly annoying because that is probably the option I'll do. I'd just do Rico Lewis to Konate for free and then have 5 free transfers next week, but I can't do that unfortunately. So essentially this is what I need to weigh up. I need to weigh up whether Calvert-Lewin and Konate are better than Gakpo and Mykolenko. On paper that should sound quite easy, just because Gakpo is probably quite a lot better than Konate, but for me, Calvert-Lewin is quite a lot better than Mykolenko, which is the issue I've got here. And also, if I get Calvert-Lewin, I can just hold him until I wildcard, and that's kind of fine. Their fixtures aren't great. However, Everton do play in Gameweek29, I'm pretty sure, so I don't have a worry there. Whereas if I've got Gakpo, I'll probably want to offload him pretty quickly. Although, I guess the same could probably be said for Konate. In that if I go with him, I won't keep him for a long time. I'll probably sell him to someone that definitely plays in Gameweek29 after that Wolves fixture. So that's where I'm at with my moves. I'm not sure which route I'm going to take here. I'm not sure if it will be Konate and Calvert-Lewin or Gakpo and Mykolenko. One thing to note as well is if I do go down the Gakpo route, I've then got a benching headache because we saw what my team looked like before and I was benching Jackson. So if I buy Calvert-Lewin this week, I'm happy to bench him. That's not a problem. They've got Brighton away, so not the best fixture anyway. I'd only do that move so that I could fund Konate in and I'd be happy benching Calvert-Lewin. Whereas if I got Gakpo in, I'd have a decision on who to bench. I'm not sure who that would end up being. It would potentially have to be Semenyo, which again I hate. I just don't like benching Semenyo. So that's one to think about. If I went down the Konate route, I'd have to bench one of the other defenders. I'm not going to bench Trent because it's Ipswich at home. Hall has Southampton away, really nice. And Munoz has Brentford at home, also really nice. So that is also kind of tough. It would probably be Munoz that is benched. But again, I'm not big on that either. So either way, I've got a benching headache realistically. It's just whether I go for, like I say, Gakpo and Mykolenko or Konate and Calvert-Lewin. Let me know what your thoughts are on this down in the comments. And also, if you've got any questions on your team, then let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you like the video, do hit like, do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.